Don't you love New York for those unexpected snippets of conversation which can bring a smile? Heard while waiting for the subway. A parent said with exasperation, "We do not celebrate Hanukkah, we are Christian. We celebrate Christmas. And no, you cannot have a dreidel." Maybe the child just wanted a toy top. And maybe the parent knew that the message of Hanukkah, the miracle of it all, was written all over that toy, and it belonged to another faith. What was for so many generations a season when we Jews felt separate and different has become a larger space which is shared. I've heard from so many this year that Hanukkah's early arrival is helpful because the meaning of the holiday isn't obscured by our neighbors' tinsel and gift wrap. When Hanukkah and Christmas fall close to each other, there's an additional element of comparison, which can feel almost apologetic while explaining it to our kids. In our American context, because religious liberty is the rallying call to our shores, there is room for everyone to celebrate as they wish. What was lacking in Europe and elsewhere could be remade here. America was the Goldene Medina, the promised land not only for Jews, but for all newcomers. And that is our American story. Listen to this American midrash, which is said to have taken place in 1777. Winter that year was harsh, almost unbearable. The soldiers stationed in Valley Forge had no inkling of why they were there. In their midst was a lone Jewish soldier, and it was the first night of Hanukkah. When all of the other soldiers had gone to sleep, he took out his menorah and lit one candle, recited the blessings, and sat down to watch the small flames dancing. Watching the candles glow brought back a host of memories of his family left behind in Poland, of his father who insisted he take the family menorah with him to his new home. The soldier was so absorbed that he didn't notice that General Washington stood next to him until he asked, "Why are you weeping? Is it the cold?" Washington had been walking through the camp to allay his own sense of despair, trying to distract himself from the many obstacles he and his men faced. The soldier jumped to his feet and saluted and said, "I am weeping before God, sir. I came to this country because I was fleeing the persecution of tyrants who have forever oppressed my family, my townspeople, and my people. Since our fate always lies in God's hands, I was praying for your success too, General Washington. My tradition teaches that despots will fall, which means that you, sir, will be victorious." "Thank you, soldier," General Washington replied. "Now tell me about what you're doing." And the soldier explained the festival of Hanukkah this way. Lighting this menorah commemorates a great miracle that occurred for our ancestors. They were only a handful compared to the massive armies, but they fought bravely. And thanks to their faith in God, they were granted a miracle. The bright flame and encouraging explanation ignited something in the weary general's eyes. And when he rose, Washington's face glowed with renewed hope. He asked the soldier for his name and then left him to celebrate in the cold and quiet darkness. I had never heard this legend before this week. When Israel was still young and trying to establish itself, this very story was given to new Ulpan students in Hebrew to help them practice their reading skills. Curious, isn't it? According to a colleague who recently attended a Hebrew Ulpan, it is still in current use. And while it isn't entirely unexpected that the merit of religious liberty would find a home in Israel, what is interesting is how our nation's early military history was interwoven with Hanukkah. There is an intentional blurring of the lines between what belongs to which culture. Fighting for a cause, freedom of religious expression, the victory of the few over the better equipped professional army, all carries a universal message for both Israelis and Americans. So when the Talmud asks famously, "My Hanukkah, what is the meaning of Hanukkah?" it is easy to think that this is rhetorical. I mean, why even ask? How can the rabbis, the authors, not know its meaning? And so it makes the reader wonder, what am I missing? And in so many areas of textual study, we have learned to read between the lines, to add missing words, to infer from the general to the particular, or to make an analogy which is not readily evident. So maybe this question requires those same analytical skills. But in this instance, the Talmud's question is sincere. So we have to ask, do you know why the authors even asked? Because they had a new answer. Nowhere in the Talmud is mention made of the Maccabee insurrection. Instead, it is all about oil and the light. Rabbi Manny Gold helps us understand why. He taught that the two Jewish communities of the time, one in Babylonia and the other in Palestine, had different approaches to living with the ruling authorities. In Babylonia, where Jews had some measure of self-government, the community took the approach of the law of the land is the law, and they did their best to accommodate and, in fact, assimilate as necessary. And in contrast, the Jewish community in Palestine took a much more activist role in pushing back against the regular encroachments upon their religious expression. Rabbi Gold wrote, "For the Jews of Babylonia, the Hanukkah story of the Maccabees' victorious struggle represented a problem. Their young people might be influenced by the Maccabee model to become activist opponents of authority. It is at this point, 6 centuries after the Maccabean victory, that the miracle of the little jar of oil finally made its appearance in sacred literature." Now, once the holiday's message has been reframed to celebrate the miracle of the oil, well, the Talmud goes all in, preserving a key discussion between the pair of sages Hillel and Shammai regarding how the menorah should be lit. And you have to admire the Talmudic logic. If we are already in a mindset asking how something should be done, we forget to ask why. Shammai, the patrician, the rigid rule maker and follower, tells us that on the first night of Hanukkah, the menorah should be fully illuminated with all 8 flames. And with the passage of each day, a flame would be removed so the diminishing light would mimic the menorah in the reconsecrated temple. Hillel, the people's rabbi, took the opposite view. In his opinion, every day of the festival, a candle should be added because, and this is a principle too, in matters of holiness, we only increase. So as Monday morning quarterbacks, we might speculate that Shammai's view of the dwindling light was just too much of a reminder of the military victory for the rabbis of the Talmud. And as we know from our own practice of lighting candles in our homes, that their debate was settled in Hillel's favor. As we glance at our own menorahs, it's hard to imagine the holiday celebrated in any other way. But what is important for us is this. With the fantastic story of the miracle of the oil, the rabbis shaped a new kind of Judaism for their day by rewriting the meaning of Hanukkah. And that was as much of a revolution as was deposing Antiochus centuries before. And for us, and for every generation who has ever wondered why Hanukkah, that question remains an open-ended invitation to define the meaning of the holiday for ourselves. And since we have both stories, oil and might, how can they help us with our own religious expression? Daniel Hartman of the Shalom Hartman Institute has a compelling answer. He looks at the Maccabean revolt as a model for Jews throughout every age, when Jewish identity and religious expression are threatened. The Maccabees' resistance gives us courage to stand our ground and defy the dominant culture, whether it is the Syrian Greeks or the modern-day anti-Semites. Refusing to be diminished, being willing to stand up for principles and for faith is an enduring lesson which Jews have embraced in every land and every age. And at the same time, while we say no to those who would strip us of our tradition, we can also say yes. Yes to the holiday's beauty, yes to hope, to fullness, to abundance, yes to the affirming strength of the Maccabean victory, which allows us to revel in the light of our tradition. In this land of freedom, may we continue to celebrate both oil and might. Chag Urim Sameach, may the lights of Hanukkah burn brightly and bring you strength, and Shabbat Shalom.